This game felt very much like Ohio State was in control.
I
Matt,
was so close to being right.
you were,
The
you were.
whole time I was watching it, I was like, oh my God. Oh
It's
my
going to
God.
happen. Was it
Oh
the
my
Michael Scott? It's
God.
happening. It's happening.
As literally as the game is ending, I'm like, oh my God, I could be right. And then I was like, no,
Right. Well, Matt, you and I watched this one together, and it was weird. It was a very weird vibe, especially in the beginning. On offense, it felt like Ohio State could pretty much do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, especially early on. Texas, on the other hand, felt like they had to work so hard to get any kind of points. And, we were talking when it happened during the game about how deflating it must have been when Texas worked so hard to finally tie it up at 7, and then Ohio State immediately scored right after that.
no. Oh my
So,
God.
Steve Sarkisian is known as such an offensive genius, which is largely true, but it feels like there's always those one or two plays that just don't make any sense. And to me, this in this game, it was that toss behind the line, second down near the end of the game,
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
Wisner ended up taking that 7 yard loss. That one was doomed from the beginning, and on the kind of on the short side of the field too, where Ohio State could just sort of gang up on everybody, and that one put them way behind the sticks and led to the sack fumble scoop and score by Jack Sawyer to put the nail in the Longhorns' coffin. So that is a very brief summary of this game. But Matt, let's start with you first on this one. What were
Interference
your
calls.
what
Pass
two
interference
two
calls.
pass interference?
When you're in the red zone and you're on the 1 yard line,
Yeah.
you don't score.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jesse. Let's start with you then. What were your
She
thoughts
has
on this one?
feelings. She's
I have
I
got
know you.
feelings.
feelings, Wes. Let's hear from Jesse.
I have
Yeah.
feelings, and I think it's because, and I love Sark. I think, and I did not love him the first time he was at Bama. I loved him when he came back because the first time we were in the Natty against Clemson, and he made some bonehead calls that truly cost us the game. And he's talked about it before of like, oops. Um, but this one, I thought that was such poor play calling. Why would you do that? I mean, I understand like the tush push may not have been the best option, but there was other options out there. How do you waste an opportunity when you have, less than 2 minutes left? You're on the 1 yard line. You have been given a gift of two pass interference calls to get you to the 1 yard line, and then you don't convert it to a touchdown. And then, of course, you have, Quinn Ewers who gets tackled, fumbles, and then it's a scoop and score by his former roommate when he was at Ohio State, which
Right.
that just hurt worse. But to me, overall, I felt like, especially in that situation, I'm putting Arch Manning in. They did it early on. And yes, they got very lucky because he was very close to fumbling that ball. But in that situation, especially when to me throughout the game, Quinn Ewers was pretty sus. And I'm going to say it, maybe Texas fans agree, maybe they don't, but I think if they don't, they need to go look back at his performance this season. I think Quinn Ewers has held Texas back.
Hmm.
And I
Oh,
think
that's a hot take. Ooh,
the hot
boy.
take, I don't think he was what he was last season. And I think, I don't know if it's injuries. I don't know what it was. I don't feel like he continued to develop. I feel like he kind of plateaued. And I think, especially in that, second and goal, third and goal situation, you needed to have somebody that could run the ball more effectively and just get that 1 yard. And I
Right.
think putting in Arch Manning would have been a better decision. I just think Quinn Ewers was pretty underwhelming this season. Um, and I think, especially in this game, you had missed reads, you had poor pocket awareness, which led to sacks. We saw it in the final plays. Um, his throwing was a little suspect at sometimes. It didn't have a lot of velocity. It wasn't always accurate. And I think as we start to look forward for him, potentially the NFL, unless those tampering rumors are true, if I'm an NFL team, he has a lot of development to do. And he needs to sit behind a veteran
Does
for,
he have a girlfriend that plays a sport at any school that we know of?
if he does, that is helpful. I've heard. if he doesn't, he should look into that because it can be advantageous.
Hey, while we're on the Quinn Ewers maybe regressed kind of statistic, let me kind of run down these numbers for you, Jesse. I just pulled up his stats from this year.
Yeah.
293 completions, which is up from last year, 272. His completion percentage dropped 4 points, so that tells you a little something right there. He threw for 7 less yards total. Average of his passes was down by a full yard, down to 7.8 on the season. He had 31 touchdowns, which is 9 more than he had last season, but he doubled his picks from last season as well. 12 picks this season as opposed to 31. And I think Jesse's got a point there. Maybe trying the Brett Favre, trying to throw it in a tight window too many times. It's a hill you can die on, and it looks like that's the case. Not to mention the fact that Quinn Ewers was sacked 31 times this season, and that's up from 27 last season. So again, they have played extra games, I guess, if you want to look at it from that perspective. Not that many more, but still, Jesse's claim has a little bit of credence, as much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of Texas fans. They're probably not going to be real happy about
Yeah,
that.
and I'm not hating on Quinn Ewers. I think he's a super talented athlete. I just think that there he just didn't have the awareness that you would think he would have moving forward after starting. And that is a concern for me. I also think, if you look at it, we talked about it last week. Ryan Day was very close to getting fired as we are turning our heads to Ohio State, very close to being fired after that Michigan loss. And then all of a sudden, he's the hero number one. I don't think he's in danger of getting fired anymore. I do think that the pressure is on, though, right? Like, you're going into the national championship. It's been a hot minute since they won. And we talked about it before, $20 million to put this team together. There are high expectations. And so I can't imagine the anxiety going through Will Howard and Ryan Day's heads. I think, again, it's that, guys, you got to save my job. And, it worked. We already talked about how I think Sarkisian should have made a quarterback change. And I think I think Texas, their defense did a really good job. I mean, I know that Ohio State had some explosive plays, but I think for the most part, they did a decent job. They were able to, and they talked about it in press conferences, take Jeremiah Smith out of the game plan, right? Like, they were able to really shut him down. And that was huge because he was such a weapon for Ohio State. But yeah, they lost in such epic fashion that it makes it worse. Like, if you would have lost in a blowout, it would have been, you're down by 3 touchdowns. You don't score anymore. You have no opportunities. That feels better than getting in the red zone.
Does it, though?
It does.
Speaking on behalf of the teams that have gotten completely boat raced by Ohio State this season, I don't know if that feels better. I don't think it does.
Like, I would have felt better because then I would have never gotten my hopes up. Like, I would have never thought that there was a chance. If we're getting boat race, I'm just like, all right, let's look to next season, And then but it's like Floyd Christmas said, so you're saying I have a chance.
Right.
And then you don't.
I think I used to watch the Braves 1995 World Series VHS all the time when I was a kid. And Bobby Cox was quoted as saying on there, he said, I'd rather lose 35-0 than lose a close game. Because they were talking about close games in that series and stuff like that. And so, to your point.
I mean, I guess that's my feeling. If I can set my expectations at the beginning and I just know that it's doom, cool. But when I have hope is debilitating.
Oh, trust me, I know. It was even personified there for a little while. But so you mentioned the cost of Ohio State's team, and a lot of people in the comments have been very quick to point out that Texas and Oregon have both spent a comparable amount of money on their rosters. I think the big difference is that the pressure involved on Ryan Day. There's not the same pressure on on Sarkisian or Dan Lanning
Not at all.
as there was on Ryan Day, simply because he's had the keys to this car for a long time. Obviously, he's really struggled beating Michigan, so he doesn't have that in his favor. And so there's just a lot of pressure on Ryan Day. So it's not just the amount of money. Certainly, that is a big thing that people are going to talk about. But what sets him apart from the others that are spending comparable amounts of money is the pressure involved. Matt, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, this was a really good game. I mean, we were going in with what, 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and it looked like, it was tied up. It looked like we were going to have a photo finish. In fact, Wes, I think at one point I looked in and go, if this game goes to overtime, I'm just going to go home because I'd had too many chicken wings at that point at Buffalo Wild Wings. I was ready to go to the house. Um, and
We
then
got
and
in
then
so much product placement for them, by the way,
we
during
really
that game.
did. Yeah, if you're listening, Buffalo Wild Wings, you're our preferred place for watching games on Saturdays. Not really, but I digress.
I'm just going to cut
I
it off after you said that and then post
Yeah.
it and tag them.
That's fine. I just the finish for this game felt so weird because Ohio State looked like, and it's like Wes said earlier, it felt like Ohio State had the keys to this entire thing the entire time in that first half, and then Sark came out in the second half, and they were able to kind of get things shut down offensively for Ohio State. And granted, this wasn't a high-scoring barn burner shootout or anything, but I mean, it felt incredibly tight going into that fourth quarter. And then those two big touchdowns at the end of the fourth quarter with like five, I think I was just looking at it. The last touchdown before the fumble return was scored with 7:45 left. Ohio State's up by a touchdown. But man, you want to talk about a gut buster. Like that was just a big shift there. I was really impressed that Ohio State was able to kind of shut down Texas. Texas's offense has looked pretty good through most of the season. When your leading rusher, or all your rushers together, are only averaging 2 yards a rush, your defensive line's doing their job, your linebackers are doing their job. This was all mostly fought in the air, and it looked like Will Howard had the edge there, except for a really bad interception when he threw one. But aside from that, this was a great game. I enjoyed it. It was, and like what you said, Jesse, it's nice to watch a game and not feel stressed. There's been a lot of talk about, is the SEC over the hill? Is it done? Is this the end of an era, so to speak? And to those people, I would say you can go ahead and pray for the downfall, but don't worry, someone will be back at some point. The NIL stuff's not going to make it to where people don't want to go to the SEC to play football. That's not going to happen. There's still going to be blue chip 4-star, 5-star, 6-star guys. They're going to come play football in the SEC. So on a personal note, I would like to add that I don't feel quite so bad about Tennessee getting nuked now, because we lost to what could potentially be the national champion. So